All right, welcome everyone. It's that time of year again to be talking about how to submit strong proposals for TrustCon and the TSPA summits. My name is Charlotte Willner. I'm the executive director here at TSPA. With me is Maggie Kerr, our director of community. And we are going to, every time I say this title, I get nervous. If you were at TrustCon last year, you remember, I'm like, that's right, right? Um, we are so excited you're joining us, whether live or later, to learn all about our submission process for the TSPA conferences in 2026. I'm going to turn things over to Maggie to get started. We're going to be taking questions live here. We're going to be answering some of the most commonly asked questions about the process. And then we are also going to make sure that you have everything you need to get a head start on the submission process. So take it away, Maggie.
Amazing. Thank you. Hello, everybody. So today we're going to go over how to submit a proposal, what makes a strong proposal, some tips around submitting. As Charlotte said, some commonly asked questions, what are the submission types, and hopefully give you a strong sense of what it takes to submit a strong proposal. There is a Q&A box. Feel free to use that box at any point during this presentation. And if you are watching this back, I'm going to, there should be a breakdown of timestamps of what we cover. So if you're after a specific question, you can go straight to the piece that you care most about. All right, so first, where do you even find the proposals site? So if you go to our main website, tspa.org, there is a drop down for the 2026 call for proposals that has both a list of all of the requirements and all of the criteria that we look at when it comes to each session type. It has FAQ questions. It's sort of the source of truth for all things call for proposals. And it also has a link to the tool that we actually use to submit proposals. Pay close attention to the submission types and the notes about them. Also, obviously, attending this webinar will give you a leg up, but the submission types have a lot of details. So if you're wondering how many panelists are actually allowed and that kind of thing, that's a good reference. If you have questions, we have an email alias trustcon-program@tspa.org, and you can shoot us an email and one of us will respond. So in terms of how you actually submit a proposal, we use a third-party tool called Exordo. And so if you head to trustcon2026.exordo.com/login, or you can just find this link on our website, that is where you will submit a proposal. So you may have an existing account, which I believe will actually work for login. I'm pretty sure. Charlotte, do you know for sure? Okay. You should be able to use your existing login if you've submitted in the past, but if not, you'll go ahead and create a login, and it will walk you through the process of what you actually need in order to submit. There is a section for an abstract. There is a guide for TrustCon that has some reminders on, submitting, and that is where you will draft and submit your proposal. There are a bunch of different sections, and this year we actually have different questions per submission type, so they're slightly different depending on what you are submitting. You can edit your proposal until the deadline, but once the deadline has passed, you are not able to edit or submit. So if you are starting your draft early, don't forget about it, because you want to make sure that you submit it. You should get a confirmation once you submit it. And if you're not sure whether you successfully submitted, feel free to reach out to us and make sure. You should get a confirmation email that you successfully submitted your proposal. They also have their own support articles and support email. So if you're like, my login's not working or something, that's a good thing to go to Exordo about. We don't manage the actual, login of the tool. And then a couple of things that are important, because this tool, while we've gotten feedback that it's pretty easy to use and it's pretty simple, so we're sticking with it for now. It was originally created for an academic audience, and so some of the terminology isn't quite how we speak about proposals, and so I just wanted to highlight a couple of the terms. So Exordo uses the term author instead of like submitter or speaker. So when you're submitting, you'll see the word author, and that is representative of speaker. Presenting author specifically is the person speaking. So that would be any panelists that you're submitting, the person who's actually doing the presentation, any facilitators who are coordinating for a workshop or roundtable. Corresponding author is the person who is submitting the proposal. Usually, like for a panel, one person, is the panel organizer, and they are both a presenter, like maybe they're um, moderating the panel, and also they're the person who's going to be contacting, us and talking with us about everything. Sometimes somebody will submit on behalf of like their VP or something like that. So just make sure that if you are the person who's submitting and you are the corresponding author, that you stay in contact with us, because we are the person who you are the person who we will be relying on to relay information. And so if sometimes the corresponding author is not also a speaker, and then sometimes they are. So those are just some terms to clarify. All right, Charlotte, do you want to talk about the different submission types?
I would love to. So, there are five different submission types that we are doing for our conferences in 2026. The first is a presentation. That's a 20-minute talk with Q&A. That's one speaker going up there talking for 20 minutes, and you'll have about 5 minutes to do Q&A. Q&A is mandatory for this session type. Presentations typically will be paired with another presentation in the same room because our sessions are about 50, 60 minutes long. So we will thematically place you with a similar speaker, and you're just going to do little dueling banjos and, have a captive audience. Sometimes we do get a question about like, well, I wrote this, I did this work with another person. Can we both be speakers for a presentation? The answer is no. We have one speaker per presentation. If your colleague wants to be like in the audience and like, be available for Q&A afterwards, totally fine. But they're not going to be in the program. It's just you as the speaker. Next one is full panel. So panels, I think this audience is probably pretty familiar with what a panel is at this point. For our TSPA events, we have no more than four panelists and one moderator. They go for the full session type, so 50 minutes. We do encourage Q&A, but Q&A is in fact optional. If you are submitting a panel, please be sure to note to us who is the moderator, because that is one of the pieces of information we have to chase down a lot, is you'll submit it and say, it must be obvious who the moderator is. It's not unless you tell us, so please let us know. Workshops are 90 or 120-minute interactive and engaging conversations. Those are not presentations. They typically require a deliverable at the end. So a little readout of this is what we worked on, here's what we discussed, here's what we came up with. We built a framework, we did a writing exercise, whatever that is. That you can have up to 70 participants in a workshop. If you do, you're going to have a co-facilitator, and we're going to talk about that a little later in the presentation. We have roundtables. This was a session format that was new to TrustCon last year, and we were experimenting with it in our summits prior to that. These are 90-minute conversations, up to 50 participants, and these are more of a discussion-oriented session. Typically, if you're just trying to figure out what's the difference between a workshop and a workshop is where something is known and you can teach it to somebody. A roundtable is like nobody knows the answer and we're going to talk about it. So that's just sort of your good rule of thumb. Finally, we do have community activities. This is something we introduced last year at TrustCon, and they were a huge hit, and we want to do more of them. So these are just typically social or networking activities led by a member of the TSPA community.
And I will say around workshops and roundtables, attendees really like these sessions because they offer so much depth, and they offer a longer amount of time to talk with other participants and talk with the facilitators and really get hands on. If you have a very high amount of participants, like if you're submitting a session and you're like, yeah, a roundtable, 50 participants, I would expect that some follow up from us, or I would recommend including this in your submission to start. If you have that many participants, what are you going to sort of do to organize to make sure that it is an in depth conversation? Typically, that means people are breaking out into small groups. So, mentioning that up front would be helpful. And if you are letting us know later you'd like to increase your count to 50, we'll probably follow up with you and just make sure you're prepared to facilitate a conversation that feels meaningful and in depth.
Great.
All right. Speakers per
Ah,
submission.
yes, I was talking about this and we're going to talk about it again. How many speakers? So, panel, you're going to have between 3 and 4 panelists and a moderator, 5 speakers total. This is actually really important to stick to, not only because it makes for a more efficient session, but also because that's how many chairs we order for that room. So if you show up with the 6, one of you's got to stand, right? We do need at least 3 panelists. 2 panelists is not really a panel. That's kind of an interview or a fireside chat. So be aiming for between 3 and 4. As I said, for presentations, it's 1 speakers, no co-presenters. We have so many presentations every year that adding a co-presenter means all of a sudden we have 500 speakers, and that's just like I can't handle it. We can't handle it. You can't handle it. So, workshops, we have 2 co-facilitators max. We do have a question in the Q&A here saying, can workshops and roundtables be led by multiple people? Yes, and in fact, we require that. So, for workshops, you can have up to 2 co-facilitators. We are allowing you to have up to 4 assistants from other TrustCon attendees. Please note that assistants are not speakers. They're not going to get a speaker ticket. Like you have to work with someone who's already attending TrustCon to bring them in. But if you need someone to like pass out some papers or, like help lead us a discussion table, right? That's something an assistant can do. If we actually just go back really quick, sorry, I know. Oh yes, and roundtables. Roundtables, you must have 1 facilitator for a roundtable of up to 20 people. You must have 2 facilitators for any more than that. And again, the max is 50. All right, and if we go to the next slide, yes. Okay, workshops and roundtables. If you need extra help for workshops and roundtables, and frankly, if you put in, yes, have 70 people come, you might. Uh, you are going to be equipped with a room host. So room hosts are people working with TSPA, either staff or volunteers, depending on the year, who are going to assist with timekeeping. They can help pass out the papers. And if you say, oh my gosh, I need another whiteboard pen, like great, they can be your runner for that. And then you can enlist up to 4 other TrustCon attendees to give light assistance. So, again, this does not mean like you have 6 co-facilitators and they're all going to be in the program, right? This means you have 2 co-facilitators and up to 4 assistants in the room who can, help with, leading an exercise or something like that. Um, Great.
Yeah, and a good rule of thumb here in terms of like what does it mean to assist versus lead? When we're talking about leading someone through an exercise, we're talking about, oh, this, I know this colleague that I work with worked on this one case study and they're going to get up and talk about it for like 90 seconds or 2 minutes, and then otherwise they're just going to participate. But it would be really helpful for this workshop if this person would talk about this thing for about 2 minutes, or this person's going to be basically attending this workshop, but I do need people at each table to kind of take charge of distributing the questions and things like that. And so I want to pick these 4 people ahead of time because I know like they like that type of role, so that will help smooth out the workshop. So we're
Yeah.
not talking, like Charlotte said, we're not talking about co-facilitators. We're talking about people who are just sort of already interested in attending this session and they're showing up to provide you a bit of extra support. If you let us know who these people are, we will not count them towards your total. So that is something to note, is if you're wanting a couple of assistants and you're like, but they have to be able to sign up. If you just let us know who they are, then I can make sure they're on the list, and that way they don't have to go through like the sign up process. All right.
Great. So, why we're all here. What makes for a strong proposal? Um, we have now run, this is going to be our 5th TrustCon. So we're learning every year, like really what makes for a strong proposal. What is, the thing that is going to distinguish your submission in a pile of probably around 500 submissions, maybe even more this year, because that's sort of where we were last year. Um, all types of submissions benefit from details and data. Avoid mystery. So when we talked with our program committee from last year, one of the pieces of feedback we got was like, I'm so frustrated by mysterious proposals. So things like, you know, in a world where everything is uncertain, can we know anything? Find out at my session. And then there's like no information about what are we going to learn? What specifically are you going to present? And so we as the program committee in particular really need to know the details. When you say we will present various case studies, we need to know what those case studies are because they might be distinctive or they might be something that everybody else is writing about, right? Um, Second, full panel proposals should include different points of view. So if everybody gets up and agrees with each other, that is not only a really boring session, right? But it's not really meeting the potential of what we think TrustCon and the summits really offer, which is a substantive, in-depth, and novel discussion of all the pressing issues in front of our field today. So we really strongly encourage you to, when you are selecting your panelists, be sure they disagree on some things. Now, it does not need to be like a knockdown fight. Like, in fact, it's against our code of conduct to have everybody like fight on stage, right? We don't want that. You don't have to put something in that's like intentionally so provocative and everyone's going to be buzzing about it. Like, we don't need to have like TMZ TrustCon. But we do need people to have, different perspectives to present to our audience. So then they can come away and sort of think through the trade-offs, the pros and cons for themselves. Uh, Number three, workshop proposals should describe an interactive and engaging session. This is not a class where you go, or it's not a lecture, right? Where you go and like listen to somebody for 50 minutes and then have 10 minutes of discussion time. This really needs to be interactive and, something that people can have a lot of discussion time within. Number four, presentation proposals should be scoped to 20 minutes. I'll say again, like having details and datas in the presentation, data in the presentation is really helpful. It is very difficult, I think, especially for the audience that we have at our events, to do like a 20-minute high-level overview of anything. Typically, that's going to be all information that most of our professionals already know. We really want something specific and detailed that you can really get into the details of within 20 minutes. Number five, roundtable proposals should include discussion questions. So if you are going to be talking and talking amongst yourselves for 90 minutes, we need to know as the program committee, well, what questions are you actually proposing to discuss? And you'll see in the call for proposals a section for you to be putting those in. Number six, community activities should be targeted and hosted by individuals. Community activities are meant to be sort of like professional to professional opportunities to engage with each other, to get to know each other better, to build some sort of social connective tissue. They are not really like a marketing opportunity. We do offer sponsorships. You can get an exhibit booth at TrustCon. You can host a breakfast. There's all kinds of ways to sort of get your brand out. Community activities are not about your brand. They're about your people and they're about the people of the TSPA community. So if you're an organization thinking about hosting, for example, a birds of a feather versus a community activity, that's sort of the distinction we're drawing there. And there is more information about that in all of our materials if you really need to get more. Finally, if you use AI, we really strongly recommend that you use it to do clarifying edits rather than the sort of bulk of your content generation. Now, listen, we're not here to tell you like don't use AI. Like that's just not the world we're living in. But what you need to understand is that the program committee does get around 500 proposals, and it's becoming pretty clear when someone has used AI to generate the bulk of their proposal. They just all sound alike, and that is a difficult thing if you want to stand out in the submission pool. So we really want to get submissions in your voice and something that is authentic to your unique experience, because that's really the meat of what we offer at these events is something that the audience can't get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. On the note around avoiding mystery as well, there in the submission form, there is one section that is for the abstract that will be used to that will transition into the description of your session if you are accepted. There's another section that is called community contribution, and there's another section that is for additional details. So if you are wanting your abstract to sound a little more, exciting, I still wouldn't recommend leaving it completely up to mystery. But if you're wanting your description itself to seem a little more, exciting, just make sure that you're adding follow-up details to support what's actually going to be in that presentation or in that submission in the following sections that are just for the program committee, because that's their opportunity to understand what you're actually presenting. So avoid mystery for us. We would like to know everything about your presentation. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the program committee because, you're submitting all of these sessions. What should you expect? Who is the program committee and what are they doing? Once you submit your proposal. So we have a program committee of over 30 members of TSPA. They are volunteers who are passionate about TrustCon and passionate about giving people opportunity to really showcase their work and present. They come from diverse backgrounds, they come from different locations, and we try to balance as much as possible, different types of skill sets, different types of companies, different parts of the ecosystem and the industry. And so they are all going to be reviewing your sessions. In addition, Charlotte, myself, and Christy Kosak, who is our senior program manager here, are also part of the PC, just so that we can kind of help design and finalize the program. So what is actually happening? What do they actually do? So members of the PC are going to be doing the following activities. First, they will weigh in on some proposed program changes. So every year we get feedback from them around what they felt like worked, what they didn't, in combination with attendee feedback. And so we run some of our changes by them. They help promote the call for proposals, especially to certain audiences. So, we're limited in how many people we know and reach out to. And so we specifically recruit some folks on the program committee who have, audiences and networks in certain parts of the industry who can help us reach the people who we would like to be submitting. Reviewing and giving feedback on proposals. So this is a huge part of their work. We spend a lot of time talking about what makes a review, what type of feedback they should be giving, and they will be giving comments on every single proposal they review. They use the criteria that is on our website that you can see to evaluate each proposal, and then they give feedback on each proposal. They do that whether they recommend accepting the proposal or not. So, if they'll talk about what they felt was strong in the proposal, and they'll also give pointers for what would make the proposal stronger. That is designed to help folks submit stronger proposals over time, especially if they're not able to be accepted. And it also helps people who are accepted refine their proposals before they're presenting. So even if you are accepted, strongly recommend looking through that feedback and actually thinking, okay, this is accepted, but they're commenting that this is quite a lot to fit into 20 minutes, or this part of the workshop could add have a little bit more logistics, or the panelists the potential panelists look pretty strong, but I might recommend adding like a different type of voice. So I would really recommend looking through that feedback. They spend a lot of time on this, and we also spend a lot of time talking about feedback within the program committee. So that's a big part of what they do. Shepherding submissions for the Revise and Resubmit process, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, but there is a couple of, this is really only a few every year. There's a couple of sessions every year where we really want that type of session represented at TrustCon. We really want this specific proposal. It has a very strong potential, but there's just a couple of things that need tweaking, and so we'll assign you a shepherd to help you through that process. And then balancing accepted sessions into the program. So the program features a wide range of perspectives and voices from all different sessions and topics. And then a few folks on the committee every year help us a bit with balancing the conference agenda. All right, so what is the actual process for what they do? Each proposal receives 3 independent reviews from reviewers who are not speaking with each other. We have a hard policy against, discussing reviews amongst each other or talking about, reviews that you know about. And they will score the proposal and provide feedback and make recommendations, and then let us know what they think about in terms of accepting or potentially revising, resubmitting, or not accepting. What is the main criteria? Originality. So does the proposal present a new topic, voice, and or perspective? This sounds very simple, but this is probably the number one piece of feedback we get from the committee, is where Proposals don't necessarily have a new voice or a new perspective on a similar topic. So we get a lot of submissions that say things like, AI is a huge problem and we should talk about it. And we do want to have those conversations, but what we need to know from you in your submission is what about this conversation specifically is going to be additive. So what do you bring in this presentation or in this submission that will help propel the audience, forward? Is it relevant? So how is the proposal relevant to trust and safety, especially this year? And contribution. So how does the proposal contribute to trust and safety? This is one that I would keep in mind if you are outside of the core practitioner group. So if you are an NGO or an academic or someone who works heavily with practitioners but may not be in the industry directly, I would think through how your content can be modified or make sure that it's relevant for a trust and safety audience. A great example is trust and safety practitioners know, what sexual assault is. They don't need sort of the basics of what, online sexual assault looks like. What they need to know from you is, the particular skill set that you bring that they may be able to learn from, but they are aware of the topic. So if you're doing a lot of presenting about, online sexual abuse to audiences that are less tech savvy, you may have a lot of that kind of 101 content in your presentation. So I would just make sure that you're adjusting your contents to really be attuned to a practitioner audience. Okay, what is not factored into our decisions? And this is questions that we get a lot, like, oh, I probably wasn't selected because of this, or I probably was selected because of this. And so I wanted to do some debunking on how we do not make decisions. So first is corporate supporter status. We could not function without corporate supporters. We are so grateful for our corporate supporters. We would not be able to run TSPA without corporate supporters. We don't use corporate supporter status to factor in as whether or not someone is accepted into the pool of presenters. Same thing with TrustCon sponsorship. We obviously could not run TrustCon without TrustCon sponsors, and we, do thank them in various ways. But submitting, being able to present automatically is not one of the benefits of being a TrustCon sponsor. Being a VIP or big name in trust and safety, I every year I say this, but every year it's more true. I'm astonished. Like, I've been in this industry for 15 years. It's crazy that we have big names and VIPs in trust and safety now, and it's a really great mark of the trajectory of trust and safety. But we do try to balance, people who are those big names and have a lot of, really great things to say with new voices and new perspectives that maybe people have not heard from before. TSPA membership status, same thing. We, of course, are so grateful for our members. It does not factor in as to whether somebody is able to present or not. And then being a member of the program committee. We do have program committee members submit, and we encourage program committee members to submit. Program committee members are, intimately aware of the process, and they may submit strong proposals because they know they've seen a lot of examples of what different proposals look like, but they are not automatically going to be accepted into the program.
And I'll just jump in to add,
Yeah.
we had a live question saying, how much do you tend to agree with the program committee percentage-wise? I guess you also do some curating. And I answered this in the chat, but I also want to answer this live. So yes, so every proposal we get, except for desk rejected proposals, which we'll talk about in a moment, every single one of those gets at least 3 reviews from 3 different members of the program committee. And sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's more. It just sort of depends. In the end, I think every year we have ended up with more high scoring proposals than we can physically accommodate at TrustCon or at the summit. And so in those cases, and I'll use TrustCon as the example because that's where we get the most submissions. That's where the TSPA team does work with typically our volunteer chairs for the conference to say, all right, we've got these five panels. They all seem exceptional. They're all about kind of the same thing, but in different ways. We can only include one of them. So which one are we going to choose and why? And then we look across all of the other sessions that have been accepted to understand like how many people have already spoken at TrustCon before, and maybe someone new wants this opportunity, right? How many, what's the likelihood that this is maybe going to rehash something that is maybe publicly available in a blog post by this company, and so you don't have to come to TrustCon to get this information. It's available elsewhere. That's really where we start to look at things like the originality criterion to say, okay, like how novel is this? How much sort of new information are practitioners going to be able to take away from this? Is this a conversation that really could only happen at TrustCon? And that's how we end up breaking some of those ties. But I'm sure, and if you are watching this, the odds are high, perhaps, that you have received a very regretful rejection email from the TrustCon program committee saying, "Hey, your content was really good, and we just didn't have room for it in the program." And that is the honest truth. We're not just buttering you up and telling you something nice. Like we get a lot of high quality submissions and do have to make some hard choices to produce the most balanced program we can.
Yes. I will say on the note of the reviews, I'm really surprised every year how many like strong themes there are between three reviewers who are very different from each other on any given proposal. The consistency in the feedback is pretty strong. And so every year when we kind of go through and read through the reviews, I do see a lot of consistency on how people are interpreting the submission. Okay, I wanted to go through deadlines just so you're aware. These are all on the website, so you don't have to remember these, but I do want to highlight them because deadlines, unfortunately for TrustCon, are hard deadlines. We have so many interdependencies, and so do our speakers, and so does everyone involved in TrustCon, so do attendees, that we can't move deadlines. So CFP, when does it open? It is open. You can submit now. You can start your draft proposal right after this session. It closes February 23 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, and you better believe every year we are up at 11:59 Pacific, hoping those last few people who we can see in draft mode are going to hit submit before the time ends.
This is true. And this
Um,
is something we do want to disclose to you is we can see your draft because it's in the system. We're not going in there to be like, "Hey, what you got in there?" But it is evident to us when someone is really close to having something done but might not get it over the line. And so we're rooting for you. If there's anything we can do to help you in that last like 24 hours, we're there for you.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah. A
we pretty
lot of
much
them,
sit by our computers the last week and just wait for questions to come in.
yeah.
Total days that it's open is 84, which right now seems like a long time, but that deadline really creeps up on you. So don't wait for those last 4 days of that 84 days. CFP decisions. So we will send decisions on April 16. So you'll get something in your inbox on that day. It will come from Exordo or like through the tool Exordo. So make sure that that is not going to your spam. Decisions. So once we decide that if you are accepted, you will need to let us know if you will be participating by April 30. That gives you a little over 2 weeks to let us know. We strongly, strongly recommend making sure that you're in the approval process before you submit and before that deadline, because you don't have a whole long time after you're accepted to go through the approval process.
The
And so,
organizational approval process, right? Like
yes,
if your
yes,
company has rules, if you work for a company that has rules about like where you can and can't say certain things, it would be so cool if you started that process immediately
yeah,
because
yeah.
yeah, that can take a while.
And I have had, especially people who have not spoken publicly as much before, there has been unfortunately a lot of surprise in how long that process can take. And so make sure, especially if you're a first time presenter or if you work at a company, that you didn't work at last year or something like that, that you're starting that approval process pretty early. Um, and then we will be publishing a draft agenda by May 12. And TrustCon is July 20 to 22. Mark it on your calendars.
It says 25 here, but we mean
Oh
26.
no,
For people
Sorry about
watching this
that.
later, it was going to sneak through at
You
some
know
point.
what? It is funny. This whole slide says 2025. Sorry about that. I, I'm still in the mode of like thinking 2025. This is the digital equivalent of like still writing 2025 on your checkbook.
Genuinely, genuinely.
Okay, let's talk about different tracks.
Different tracks. All right. So, tracks are called topics in Xordo. Tracks are basically the themes that we're sort of like the top level themes we're accepting submissions around for the year. This year, you will notice we have expanded the number of tracks that we are prompting people to submit under. It's okay if you have something you want to submit that doesn't really fit under any of these things, just do your best. But we wanted to put a couple more of these sort of on the top level to help people understand from at a glance, like these are the types of topics we're interested in receiving submissions on for TrustCon. So this year they are child safety, they are engineering, and this year we are doing priority themes for engineering. Specifically, we would love to see your proposals around detection, infrastructure, and monitoring and metrics. We'd really like to do a full engineering day this year, and our PC, our program committee volunteers are really committed to making this happen this year, but it can only happen if you submit. We are also accepting submissions on extremism, fraud, investigations and intelligence, model safety, offline harm, operations, partnerships, policy, product, professional development, what we're all about at TSPA, regulation, research, well-being, and finally, community activities for networking. And again, if you got something that fits into multiple of these or none of these, there will be a way to sort of denote that as you submit.
All right.
All right.
Oops.
Uh, let's talk about desk rejects. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier that every submission that comes into TrustCon typically will receive at least 3 independent reviews from our program committee. I say typically because every year there are a handful that we do something called a desk reject on. So when 11:59 p.m. passes and the deadline is done, everything closes. The TSBA team pulls all of the submissions, and we actually do a first pass on every single submission before we pass it to the program committee. And that is because we need to upfront reject anything that does not sort of on the face of it meet our acceptance criteria at all. So those are things like incomplete proposals. If you submit something that's like, I'll find something to put here, lorem ipsum, right? Like we unfortunately are going to reject that proposal and not pass it along to our volunteer program committee. Similarly, if it is a sales pitch, so we get a handful of these every year where someone's like, have you ever heard of my amazing AI solution for everything? I'm going to show you. Like, that's not something we accept at TrustCon. That's not what that's for. And we will do an automatic rejection of that so that we're not having the program committee review that. Finally, any proposals that reinforce existing biases or assumptions. Uh, I don't know that we've actually ever had to desk reject anything that trips this particular one, but I wouldn't like to start. You know what I mean? So if you're coming in saying like, who sucks at trust and safety? Women. Like, okay, we're not doing that, right? And I don't think any of you will submit one like that. So just don't.
I would
Um,
say borderline version of this is concepts around content moderation.
yes.
And that community of practitioners being considered in certain ways, like that aren't necessarily as respectful of that
Mhm.
uh, pr- part of the profession. And so I would say that is maybe the borderline. I don't think we've ever desk rejected.
We've never desk rejected that, but actually that is a good flag. We have
Yeah.
rejected, the
Yeah.
program committee has rejected proposals like that. The trust and safety professional community is really broad. And sometimes we do get proposals that are like, well, now that we're past all that frontline moderation BS, and it's like, whoa, like think about who you're talking to here. And we're always delighted, frankly, to let the program committee weigh in on that because they're happy to share some feedback on that type of perspective.
Mhm.
So do please be respectful in the way that you submit your proposals.
Yeah, or even saying things like they feel a certain way, but they are not represented on the panel, or they are
Mhm.
not, in this was not a conversation that was had directly with the population that
Mhm.
you're speaking to. So,
Yeah, listen, actually, that is a hot tip. If you're submitting a panel and it's going to be all about the experience of a particular group,
mhm.
and you have no one from that group on that panel, you shouldn't submit it like that yet. You should find somebody to represent that perspective. So there's your tip.
All right.
All right. Revise and resubmit. Okay. So we lightly touched on this earlier. There are occasions where we, as the program committee, will review a proposal and say, wow, this isn't quite there yet, but with a little coaching, this could be phenomenal. So we typically see these from people who maybe haven't done a lot of public speaking before, but would introduce a really interesting and new perspective to the community discourse. Or maybe it's something where it's a panel where like the questions are really good, but it doesn't seem like they've quite gotten the mix of representation we want to see on stage to say, yes, this is a go. If your submission is flagged for revise and resubmit, what will happen is we will reach out to you and say, hey, this is almost there, but there's some changes we need to see to accept it overall. You will be provided with a shepherd from the program committee who works with you to sort of get it up to par. And you then must make your final changes. You got to submit those before our RSVP deadline. So we can look at it and say, yep, you did it. We're all set here. Go ahead and register as a speaker. So you will get instructions if that's something that we elect to do with your proposal. This is a small segment of proposals every year. I don't think we do more than maybe 10 or 12 revise and resubmits, and they're so intensive. We actually try to do fewer and fewer every year. But just know if you are being invited to revise and resubmit, it means we really liked this and we want to do extra work to make sure you can get there. So that's R&R.
We have a question here. Is there a policy on allowing youth panelists to provide perspectives on youth well-being and like the education piece, etc.? We have not had to cross this bridge yet, have we?
We have not yet, but we did talk about it in terms of our policies this year because, every year, I'm sure all of you who have attended TrustCon before have filled out our survey. Yes, of course. But we read every response to that survey from attendees. And one of the discussion points this year was like, is it okay to have young people at TrustCon? And it was in the context of like, hey, there's a toddler in here. Is that okay? Right. So we're going to be updating some policies on that. But it prompted with our team a discussion about like, well, what if someone is 17 and is part of a youth council and wants to share a perspective? Technically, we require that you be 18 to attend TrustCon because we cover a lot of adult material. But we do want to allow for panelists who are perhaps not 18 themselves, but have something to contribute to the discussion. So if you have a youth panelist or youth speaker you want to introduce, go ahead and flag that in your submission, and we will work with you to make sure that they're included in a way that is, appropriate, but still inclusive of their experience.
Okay.
Someone says, sorry, I didn't understand. Revise and resubmit happens while the CFP is open. I guess then those that submit close to the deadline will not be able to potentially benefit from this. No. Isn't that right, Maggie?
That is, yeah.
Yeah,
You can submit up until the deadline, so
yeah,
that
yeah.
does not impact the revise and resubmit process. The RSVP deadline refers to people who are accepted. So this would be after you get the notification. So you'll get in our process, let me look at the dates here. Um, when you'll get notified on April 30 if you are flat out accepted. You'll get notified a bit earlier than that if we want to give you a few extra weeks in order to revise and resubmit your submission. So that's what it's, and then you still need to let us know and make those changes by April 30. So
Mhm.
this is not about the, when the CFP closes, this is about when the decisions are due. I think that answers your question, but let us know if not.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone submits up to the same deadline, and then that's one of the reasons we're really reading all those submissions early on is to flag what might be an R&R.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. And last but not least, if you are watching this back because you are submitting to a summit, most of this content is basically the same for summits, and there is just a couple of exception or just a couple of differences. So I wanted to go over those. So summits have a theme and sub-themes. Every year, the program committee for a summit will select a theme or a sub-themes that you need to adhere to just because they're a much shorter conference, so we can't cover every single topic. Proposals must connect to the region and theme. And so on top of the theme, they do need to be relevant to the communities that they're presenting to. We really focus on the regions that we're selecting for summits, and so we want to make sure that they get the opportunity to discuss topics that are most relevant to that region. The program committee is made up of entirely people within the region. So, with the exception of us who run TSPA, the entire community program committee is made up of folks in region. And they are the ones who are going to be helping us select what is most relevant for the region. Summits are 1 day events, which mean the presentation piece is a 1 day event, which means multiple proposals are much less likely to be accepted. On a 3 day conference, there are some speakers who end up on a panel and also leading a workshop. In summits, that is far less likely, so make sure that you're being choosy with what you're submitting. And summits also include a professional development day. So this year we had a half day for professional development, and that was more around things like public speaking training and crisis response planning and things like that. So they're a bit different in that way, and it's broken out by day, whereas for TrustCon that content is a little bit more integrated into all 3 days. So that is all we had for the main part of the presentation. Now we get to our favorite part of this conversation, which is any questions that you had. They could be about what we presented. They could be something that you were curious and hoping that we covered that we did not. So we can start with a couple of our commonly asked questions, and I'm just going to stop
Yeah.
presenting.
We went ahead and made a whole list of like questions you might have because we do get these all the time throughout the year. The first one is like, hey, when can I register? Like, what if I submit and I hope I get speaker pricing, but I don't know because I don't know if I've been accepted or not yet. Like, should I buy a ticket before I know if I've been accepted or not? Maggie, should someone buy a ticket if they don't know if they're going to be a speaker or not?
Great question. No. So we reconfigured by we, I really mean Ilea, who is working very hard behind the scenes
Membership
with
manager.
registration.
Mhm.
Registration should open in January, and the speaker pricing will make sure to account for when speakers actually hear about whether or not they're presenting. So the early bird pricing will last through when you get your email, and so you can wait until you get that final decision before you purchase your ticket and safely still take advantage of speaker pricing.
All right. Next question we often get is, hey, I want to submit a panel, but I don't really know all the people I would want to have be panelists. I know I need a voice that represents this or that, but like, who could that be? Can you set me up with a panelist that meets certain criteria?
Okay, this is actually great feedback that we got from the program committee last year and something we changed this year. So, historically, we've had this form that you can share your name and express interest in being a panelist. So, actually, if you're on this call and you're interested in being a panelist, also advertising that you can submit yourself as a panelist. We used to have that form open after we accepted panels with the idea of, oh, if you're looking for an extra panelist, accepted panels can reach out. We now have that form open now. So you can submit your name and someone may reach out to you before the CFP closes because they are in the works of organizing a panel, or they may reach out to you after their panel is accepted and they're in search of your specific skill set. If you are a panel organizer and you're looking for access to that list, please reach out to the TrustCon program alias, and we can share how to use that list and all those things. So the answer is yes, we do our best to collect names of people who are interested in being a panelist.
We did get a question in the chat. Can submissions come from someone who isn't currently employed? And the answer is emphatically yes. We have lots of speakers every year who are not currently employed. Organizational approvals are very easy for you, I suppose, when you don't have a boss who's telling you, yes, you can participate or no, you can't. When you're your own boss temporarily, you can just do it. So yes, you're absolutely welcome to put together a proposal.
Speaking
Um,
of panelists, Charlotte, do we really need all panel questions?
Thank you for asking this planted question. Here's the thing on panels, because I often end up being a primary reviewer on all of our panels. You really, if you can, it does make a difference if you have put all your questions into your panel submission and if you have confirmed all of your panelists for your submission. And as I said earlier, sometimes we do end up with like, five amazing panels we would love to accept. And what, sort of puts one over the edge is that they've already got their panelists confirmed and they have given us a full list of like, these are the questions we're probably gonna cover. Um, you don't have to have like a totally firmed up 100% approved by everybody script for your panel at the submission stage, but we do really need a preview of your questions to understand the level of nuance that you're getting into in the conversation and to gauge whether you've sourced panelists who are going to disagree with each other on certain things, right? So our selection criteria make it to where you really want to be submitting those questions and confirming those panelists. Every year we do have people who say, "Hey, I have asked the following people, but like two of them can't confirm yet." That's okay. What we actually want to know is that you've had the conversation and that you are prepared as the panel organizer to get those confirmations. Because when you submit a panel and we say, "Yeah, sure, hey, come do it," you are the one responsible for lining up your speakers and making sure that they sort of meet the criteria it was accepted under. So there's a twofer question on panels. Let's see what else we've got in here. Oh, here's a common one we get. What if I make a submission and then something changes about the topic I submitted? So, what if I want to do world elections in 2026 and I submit in February when none of the elections have happened, but some of the elections will have happened by the time it's July. Like, how do I incorporate that? We are totally acknowledged that the world changes between February and July. That's unfortunately a great measure of job security for all of us, is it not? Um, we will work with you if something has changed so dramatically that you just cannot possibly give the session as originally proposed. But what we find is that even if you're going to be speaking to a specific situation or case study, there's a lot of evergreen sort of underlying content there that is going to be just fine for a July presentation.
This made me remember that oftentimes people also ask what happens if they stop working at a company and they had a presentation or something along that lines. Usually, it's a presentation accepted, as they worked at a certain company. The answer to that is it depends. If the content is independent and you're still fine to present that content, you are welcome to switch companies and still present the content you were originally planning on presenting. If it is more on behalf of a company and you are sort of being sent to present, XYZ's, solution to something, you can swap out that speaker if that makes the most sense as well. So we can swap out for a different, representative from your company.
All right. We had a question about, is it okay to invite panelists who aren't already attending TrustCon? And the answer is yes. Actually, many people submit and don't know if they're going to attend TrustCon or not. They're going to attend if they are speaking, and they're not going to attend if they're not. That's totally standard. The main thing we want to gauge is that you've had a conversation with the proposed panelists and they have, in theory, agreed to do it. But they don't need to have like bought their plane tickets and say, "Yeah, I'm going," right? Like that would be premature. We do get submissions every year where someone's like, "I am going to invite, the chief amazing officer at such and such hot company, and they're going to be on my panel." And then the email address they put in for the panelist is like, "Cool guy at coolcompany.com." It's like clearly they haven't had this conversation. We can often tell if that's the case, and that's going to count against your proposal. So if you are proposing certain speakers, be sure they know that you have proposed them and that they're aligned and are agreeing to do it with you.
A note on selecting panelists who are already attending TrustCon. I will say we are not equipped to do virtual panelists or virtual
Mhm.
presentations because of the way the conference works. And so, if you are needing to kind of change panelists last minute, I would recommend looking more for somebody who is already attending TrustCon. And so, just a note on like, make sure that they're able to show up in person.
Mhm. We have a question here. Does it make sense to submit independently and not as an employee of an organization? Sometimes there are some restrictions put up at the last minute of some orgs. Well, here's what I'll tell you. If you work for an organization that is going to not support your speaking at a conference and then you speak at the conference anyway, that sounds dicey to me as the director of the professional association. I don't know that I would advise that as your professional move. Um, Everyone at speaking at TrustCon, everyone attending TrustCon is ultimately attending in their independent capacity as a professional. That's how people, join TSPA. You are here as an individual member who happens to be working for a particular company at a particular time. That said, yeah, I think you really do need to get organizational approval from your organization if you're going to be speaking about something that touches your organization. If you are submitting something that's like my journey as a PM and what I've learned at every past company I've ever worked at, that's a really different thing than like, here's the way I do my job currently and what I've learned with our particular tech stack, right? One of those probably doesn't require the level of organizational approval that the other one would, but in general, we really rely on our submitters to know what their process is, know what the terms of their employment are, and to follow those rules. Maggie, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's right. Yeah.
We also have a question. Are any special rules for NGOs or government submissions? Are scholarships available for travel or attendance if selected? Oh, a multi-prong. We love it. Let's talk about scholarships really quick, and then let's talk about special rules. So, scholarships, we do have financial assistance set aside every year to make sure that people who want to attend or speak at TrustCon are able to do so, and that money is not the barrier to them. Uh, Side note, we are a nonprofit and we do our very best to do that, but we do not have unlimited funds. We have in the last few years had a really generous sponsor or two uh, contribute to that scholarship fund. And so if you want to be a popular sponsor, let me tell you what, you and me, we can talk about putting you into the scholarship fund. We reserve a certain amount of that money for and to just prioritize speakers. So once you know you're accepted, if you're like, and wow, I can't pay for this, go ahead and apply, and we're going to make sure that you have as much assistance as we can provide to make your trip possible. Um, in terms of special rules, uh, we don't have any rules about like what NGOs or governments can or can't say in their submissions. You probably do, but we don't. Um, what I will say in terms of NGO and government participation, and indeed just participation sort of beyond the trust and safety professional group, is that there are some sessions at TrustCon that are going to be closed to anyone except TSPA members. So, there are some professionals only sessions. That's typically not the majority of sessions. A few here and there. But just so you know, in terms of planning your participation, not every session is open to every attendee. Um, that's the main note I'd put on that, I think.
We have about 30 more seconds. Do we have any other last minute questions?
Last chance, unless you email us at trustconprogram@tspa.org.
I'm going to spend this last 30 seconds making a plug, which is we work hard to have a diverse set of topics at TrustCon. And historically, some of the topics we've struggled the most to receive, submissions we've struggled with the most with, are technical presentations, presentations from folks who are in roles that deal heavily in offline harm, and also submissions from folks who work at medium to smaller size companies and teams. That one, especially if you work at a company where you have a very small team, we would love your voice at TrustCon more, because we often see wonderful presentations from larger companies who have a lot more resources than smaller companies. And so we would love to hear from you. So if you fit that audience, or if you're watching this back and you know people who fit any of those audiences, we welcome all submissions. We are especially on the hunt for those types in addition to the ones that we typically get. So please help us spread the word.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone who is interested in submitting. This is what makes the magic of TrustCon and the summits happen. And we're just delighted that you want to spend some time with us.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.